We're doing our interview with, of course, our official referee. He's known around the world as one of the best, and you know, I don't find that to be fair. I believe him to be the best. Master Series MMA was dubbed that because we only deal with the finest and the quality, and we won't have any fights go down without this young man. Dan Miragliotta, say hello, my man.
Hello, sir. How are you? And thank you for having me.
Nah, it's absolutely our pleasure. Look, Dan, you know, we really wanted to get into it because this is something that, you know, I haven't really seen much of yet. You know, a big part of the fight is how the referee does their thing. How does the referee keep the action flowing? Are they overcalling? You know, are they separating too quickly? Whether it's boxing or MMA, and it really does tend to, especially more so in MMA than even in boxing, really does play out. And they don't really get into what it is that the refs do. Where do they come from? What's their background? And I find that to be a foolish mistake. And listen, the honest truth, and I told you this before, the first time I saw you walk across that screen, I'm like, that is the biggest dude I've ever seen. He's awesome. And then I watched you call the fight, and you did exactly, the fight was given the justice it deserved. And that's why I couldn't do any, I'm not going to either to have any of these go on without you, brother. So let me ask you, give us a little bit about yourself. Talk to us.
Well, I started training martial arts when I was 14 years old. I started in the traditional Korean style Tong Sudo. My instructor went into the Marine Corps and left the school with no one to teach, and all students with no instructors. So I went and changed over to a Japanese style, which is Shito-Ryu. I received my first black belt there when I was 19 years old. Moved out of the area, wanted to continue training martial arts, so I started training Kempo Karate and JKD. And the JKD had the Kali, the Muay Thai, and the grappling.
Wow, so they really did with Jeet Kune Do. So the people don't know, JKD is Jeet Kune Do school. Basically, they were doing MMA from that point on. This is a while back, was it not?
Oh yeah, this was back in like '89, so it was a long time ago.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, you know, we're getting there, brother. You know, but you know. Keep going now. Give us, you know, more of the background. Like, okay, so you've gotten in with the training, but what about any fighting or any of that kind of? I mean, have you done amateur? Have you done any pro fighting yourself? You know, give us a little explanation.
Well, back in the day, there was no MMA. It was mostly judo tournaments, karate tournaments, full contact kickboxing. The Kali Eskrima week after organization had a full contact stick fighting tournament. So that's what I did. I competed wherever I could compete, and back then it was karate tournaments. I was national champion and regional champion for the WECAF association with the stick fighting, Kali. I trained with Dosei Pari system, received my brown belt with those guys. Started doing Muay Thai back in like '85, and just kept on doing it. And then I met Renzo Gracie and started doing the jiu-jitsu with Renzo. I received my blue belt with him after a couple of years. And I opened up my own school back in '90, and I just closed it 6 years ago. When I had my school, there was nowhere for my fighters to fight, so I started running the tournament, which was called Bama Fight Nights, and a lot of guys you see on the UFC today, or not so much today, a few years ago, were there. Matt Serra, Nick Serra, Drago, a whole bunch of guys from the East Coast that moved up to the UFC, from my show to Ring of Combat to the UFC.
Yeah, I remember.
Started with us. You know?
And Ring of Combat, they're still doing their thing, or no? That's over also, isn't it?
No, Lou Neglia still runs 3 or 4 shows a year, pro shows in Atlantic City. He probably runs about 4 amateur shows a year around New Jersey. You know.
Good for him. Listen, we want to make this thing flourish, and God willing, you know. Listen, the funny thing is that people think, oh, you know, competition. No, it really is what's good for the sport is good for the sport, and people don't get that. Like, you know, and people don't also understand that it's also what happens with MMA affects boxing, and it affects also wrestling. These are professional pugilist sports. That's how people will look at it. That's how your sponsors look at it. Obviously, you're different demographics. I mean, you're hitting a different crowd with boxing as opposed to wrestling or MMA, you know, and the same is said for all of that. But, you know, let's go into you. How did you get into reffing? I mean, you went from, you know, training and doing, you know, the tournaments, having all of that, to actually refereeing, and then you went from, you know, whichever the shows were to obviously coming up with the UFC, and you've been with them for a while now. You've done your thing with them. So talk to us about that.
Well, like I said, there was no shows around, so I had fighters and nowhere for them to fight. It wasn't sanctioned anywhere yet. It was the gray area. It wasn't legal. It wasn't illegal. The UFC was banned. So until someone decided to take the ban off and step up and grow a set of balls and say, okay, here's the rules, we're going to go with these rules, which New Jersey and Vegas did, my show was running without a sanctioning body. I ran 24 events. So I refereed all my events.
Oh,
I was the matchmaker, the promoter, the ring installer, the ring taker downer.
Oh, jeez. All that
my wife cooked the food, my kids ran around on the mats, and we had a great time. It was a family-run thing. And I refed. And after my 17th or 18th show, doing 20 to 25 fights a night, I brought in a good student of mine, a good friend of mine, Kevin Mulhall, who you also see on UFC.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Refereeing.
Absolutely.
So he and I started doing it, and he kind of took a lot of pressure off of me, and I was able to run the show. Only ref like maybe the last 5 or 6 fights out of 20. And,
definitely.
Moved on. And then when the UFC came to New Jersey, they wanted to use their officials, and the New Jersey Commission says, no, you're in my state, we're using our officials. So that was my step into the door to referee for them, and they liked the way I refed, and they picked me up. And then shortly thereafter, a few shows later, they picked Kevin up.
Yep.
And now New Jersey has quite a few officials that move around with the UFC at various locations.
It really does matter. A referee, I believe, is as integral, if not more so, than any other part besides the two fighters. You have to have the proper reffing because that's the director inside the ring. You're the director inside the ring. You're showing these people where is it going to go, what is the rules, yes, you can do this, no, you can't, and it's important, brother. You know what I mean? And that's why, like I said, you must, that experience, that level of determination and being able to go on every side, this is what makes you number one, brother. I'm not going to pull punches. I love everybody who's in the business, but like I said, I'm going to acknowledge who's number one when it's number one.